At that time, everyone over there was saying the same thing. Mark Winger is a hero. The official version was that his house had been invaded by a criminal and that this guy killed his wife. And that Mark, even though he was injured and weak, managed to fight back and took down the intruder. The whole city worshipped the guy. He practically became a local celebrity, received honors at church, from the city hall, from NGOs, appeared in newspapers, magazines, and even ended up on television shows. Over time, donations came in, lawsuits, compensations, and the guy, who used to live a normal, almost invisible life, ended up becoming rich and influential. He was treated as an example of courage, someone who saved his own family. But behind this hero image, the real story was much stranger and much darker than anyone could imagine. I'm Marcos Campos, and if you like to learn about real stories with lots of details, subscribe to the channel. Every week there are several episodes. Become a member if you can, it helps me a lot. If you can't, just leave a like and a comment, that's already great. Deal? Announcements made. Let's get to the facts. Going back a bit in time, in August 1995, Mark Winger and Donna Brown seemed like the typical happy couple. They had been married for 7 years, lived in Springfield, Illinois, went to church, had a beautiful house, and a stable routine. Donna worked as a surgical assistant at a large local hospital, and Mark was a nuclear safety engineer contracted by the state. And to top it off, in June of that year, they finally fulfilled a long-time dream. They adopted a baby girl, a little girl who was named Bailey. Donna was radiant with motherhood, and everything indicated that their lives were entering a much better phase, even better. But in just a few months, all of that would come crashing down. Shortly after the adoption, Donna decided to travel with little Bailey to visit her parents who lived in Florida. When she landed at the airport, she hired a transportation company called BART to take them to her family's house. The van ride took about an hour and a half, and that's when things started to get strange. The driver of the van was named Roger Harrington. During the trip, he drove aggressively, at high speed, making dangerous maneuvers. In addition, he started saying things that were completely out of context, commenting about violent thoughts that he claimed to have frequently. That, of course, left Donna in a panic, especially because she was holding her newly adopted little daughter in her arms. Even though she was terrified, she managed to safely reach her parents' house. As soon as she calmed down a bit, Donna decided to make all of this official. She wrote a letter to the BART company, reporting the experience, describing the driver's behavior, and the real fear she felt during the entire ride. When Mark found out about this, he was outraged. He called the company to complain, he pressured them. The result, Roger was reprimanded and ended up losing his job. Later, it came to light that this driver, who was 27 years old, had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia since adolescence. He was being treated by a psychiatrist and was taking antipsychotics, but at that time, he had already gone several days without taking his medication, which may, according to reports, have triggered this crisis. It was also discovered that, in the past, a former partner had already accused Roger of domestic violence. After that, he had gone on with his life without major problems. It really seems like those were isolated incidents resulting from his condition. So, nothing had been reported until that day when he went to pick up Donna at the airport. And that day, that meeting, that absolutely ordinary ride was hiding details that would end up tragically connecting to what would happen a few months later. A few days after Donna came back home, Mark started saying he was receiving threatening phone calls, prank calls, and he was almost sure that they were coming from Roger, the driver. A week after that trip, he decided to do something that nobody knew about. He got in touch with Roger on his own and arranged a meeting at his house, saying he wanted to talk. That is, at Mark's house, his family's place. From the way Mark talked, it seemed like maybe it could somehow be a friendly conversation to help Roger get his job back. After all, it's likely that Donna understood he had a disorder, was taking medication, and stopped for some reason. In short, trying to smooth things over. For Roger, the driver, that really sounded like a chance to fix the whole situation. He got excited, wrote down the address on a piece of paper, and agreed to go there early to Mark's house. This is where the story completely changes its tone. It was very early when Roger arrived at Mark's house, exactly at the agreed time. The two sat at the kitchen table and started talking. Everything seemed normal, at least on the surface. At some point, Mark asked Roger to stand up. When he did, Mark simply pulled out a gun and fired. With the sound of the shot, Donna, of course, who was in the bedroom with the 3-month-old baby, got scared and ran to the kitchen to see what was happening. And it was at that moment that Mark turned on her and started attacking her with a hammer until he killed her. In other words, from the very beginning, when he heard about Roger's history, Mark had already seen the perfect target for the plan he already had or was putting together. Someone with psychological issues, with a complicated past, easy to point to as guilty, a ready-made scapegoat. With Roger shot and his own wife mortally wounded on the floor, Mark still had time to organize the house, in fact, to organize the crime scene. Then he picked up the phone and called the police, as if everything had just happened unexpectedly.
"911, what's your emergency?"
I need help. Oh my God, my wife isn't breathing.
Okay, do you need an ambulance?
I need everything. I need everything.
Springfield Police.
Yes, I need help.
What is your problem?
I just shot a man in my house.
Is he inside your house?
He attacked my wife.
But is he there now?
Yes.
Do you have a gun?
Her brain is everywhere.
Where is the man?
He's lying on the floor.
Is he dead?
I don't know. He's making strange noises. Please, please!
Sir, please stay calm. I don't understand you. Speak more slowly. Is this man still in your house?
Yes, he's on the floor with a bullet in his head.
Did you shoot him?
Yes, I shot him. He was killing my wife. My baby is crying. My baby is crying. I have to go. I'll call again.
In the first call to the police, you can hear in the background a man groaning while Mark is talking to the operator. At a certain point, the call drops, and that's when the situation gets even more intense. Realizing that Roger was still alive, Mark goes over and shoots him 2 more times. Then he calls the police again.
Hello.
Mr. Winger?
Yes, yes.
This is the police department. Officers are on their way. Please tell me what's happening.
My wife is dying on the floor.
All right, is she still alive?
I think so.
All right, there's an ambulance on the way, and the police officers are on their way too. Where is the weapon?
I left it on the table. It's on top of the table. It's on the table. Please, God, please come.
They're on their way.
All right.
Who is this man?
Hey, I don't know who he is.
Is he still inside the house?
Yes, he's lying on the floor. All right, I'll stay close to my wife. I'll try to stay close to my wife.
All right, are you Mark Winger?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
All right, and your wife is Donna.
Yes, she is.
When did the man come at you?
I don't know. A few minutes ago. I have to stay with my wife. Please, just let me stay with my wife. I'll hang up, okay?
All right, there are police officers on the way.
All right, my door is open.
All right.
When the police finally arrive at the house, Mark tells his version. He says he was exercising on the treadmill in the basement when he heard a loud noise upstairs. He ran upstairs and, according to him, came face to face with a strange man attacking Donna with a hammer. In the story he tells, he only did what any husband would do. He ran, grabbed his gun, and shot the attacker to save his wife. When the ambulance arrived, both Roger and Donna still had some very faint vital signs. Since there was still a chance of survival, both of them were rushed to the hospital. The police, in fact, barely had time to document the scene in detail. Only 3 photos were taken before the bodies were removed. A single investigator stayed at the scene with Mark to continue the procedures, and that's exactly when the first things that didn't add up started to appear. Detective Williamson, who took the initial statement, heard from Mark that he had never seen that man before in his life. But inside Roger's car, there was a piece of paper with Mark's name and address written on it. And the car was parked right in front of the house in broad daylight, which didn't really match with someone in a fit of rage who went in there to commit a murder. There was also no sign of forced entry. In other words, someone opened the door for Roger to come in. And that raises another question. Why would Donna let in the very man she had reported just days before and said she was afraid of? But Roger had a firearm stored in the car's spare tire, but he didn't take the weapon inside the house. The hammer used in the attack on Donna belonged to the couple themselves. Mark tried to explain, saying that his wife had left the hammer outside to hang a supposed picture on the wall, and blah blah blah. And to top it all off, the police found a copy of the letter that Donna had sent to the Bart Company, reporting Roger's behavior. That letter was hanging on the kitchen refrigerator, as if that matter was very present in the household's daily routine. In other words, that assumption that Donna was somehow regretful that she had understood didn't make sense. It's likely that Roger hadn't even mentioned anything like that to her. She had no idea that Mark had invited the guy to their house. In Detective Williamson's mind, none of that made sense either. What kind of person drives several miles to kill someone? Parks in front of the house during the day, leaves his weapon in the car, and goes in unarmed? And more. What kind of victim opens the door to someone she herself had accused and said she was afraid of? Another detail drew even more attention. Roger didn't show up there with an aggressive attitude. Apparently, he was even holding a cup of coffee in his hand, smoking a cigarette. Everything indicated that he went there to really talk, not to kill someone. After all, what kind of killer shows up like that, right? As if he's just going to have a chat. And Mark's own behavior also seemed strange. I was thinking about the killer. Feel free to comment later. Instead of getting into the ambulance and going with his wife, I'm talking about Mark here, justifying his strange behavior. Instead of getting into the ambulance, he stayed at the house, following the police officer who was doing the preliminary investigation. And he didn't show any concern. He didn't stay there because the police asked him to. Apparently, he wanted to stay on his own to explain the scene. Well, Roger, the driver, died before reaching the hospital, and Donna passed away a few minutes after entering the operating room. Even with all these strange things, for most people, the story was simple. Mark was a hero. Even Donna's own family believed that. In everyone's mind, he really had been the husband who ran to save his wife. Now he was a grieving widower, and on top of that, a single father to a newly adopted baby. The perfect image for everyone to feel sorry for him, to empathize. Detective Williamson, who from the beginning thought all of that was strange, that it didn't add up, ended up being practically told by his superiors to stay out of it. 2 days later, the case was officially closed. No mystery, no further investigation. At the wake, Mark showed up devastated. He cried a lot, leaned on people, and said he had lost the love of his life. The ceremony was covered by local newspapers and even broadcast on community television. Everyone saw that man as a victim of violence, someone who had gone through an unbelievable trauma. And Donna ended up being buried without ever being able to see her daughter grow up, the baby she had dreamed of having and who had just come into her life. But over time, that image of a devastated father, a hero, started to fall apart. Today, it's known that Mark might not have been a hero at all. In fact, everything indicates that he was extremely cold and calculating. In just 1 week, he managed to put together an entire plan so that everything would make sense later. Starting with the letter, it was no coincidence that Donna wrote to the company reporting Roger. The investigation later showed that it was Mark himself who insisted on that. Then the supposed threatening prank calls started to appear, which he began telling everyone about. Friends, acquaintances, people from church, always blaming the same name, Roger, the schizophrenic driver. He spread the idea that Roger was obsessed with Donna, angry about being fired and wanting to get revenge. In other words, when something happened, there was already a villain ready in everyone's mind. And when Donna was buried, Mark didn't waste any time. As soon as the commotion died down a bit, he looked for a lawyer and sued Bart Transport Company, asking for $5 million in damages. He claimed that they had put a dangerous man in his family's path. In addition, there was Donna's life insurance, which brought him about $150,000. And since the story of the husband who confronted his wife's killer had moved the whole city, he also received almost $100,000 in donations from a crime victim support organization. In other words, In a very short time, the man who was seen as a devastated widower also became someone who was very well off financially. All of this was supported by a narrative that increasingly seemed to have been crafted down to the smallest details. The years went by and Mark remained financially stable and rebuilt his life. He ended up marrying his own daughter's nanny, Rebecca Hendit, who had been hired just a few months after Donna's death. With Rebecca, he had a biological son and also adopted 2 more children. Big family, full house, everything apparently in order, but inside, Mark couldn't find peace. After all, what would make a man like that, supposedly in love with his wife, who had just adopted a child, commit a crime as grotesque as the one he did? What would be the motivation for that? Well, he used to call the police frequently, asking if there was any news about Donna's case, even though the investigation was officially closed. When he got married again, he made a point of personally calling the detective just to say he was happy with his new life. It was almost like he was taunting him. He knew that Detective Williamson had never bought that story. Another strange thing. Over the years, Mark asked the police several times to return the items seized from the crime scene, the revolver and the hammer. All the requests were denied. That was unsettling, wasn't it? It started to bother the detective more and more. In Williamson's mind, someone who's innocent usually wants to stay away from a case like this, right? But someone who's guilty often does the opposite, tries to keep a close eye on everything. That thing about making it obvious, yeah, so it doesn't attract too much attention. As if he needed to have control over the situation too, and Mark's interest bordered on obsession. He seemed like someone afraid that at any moment something would come to light, and didn't it? In 2001, the twist he feared so much happened. Here's another plot twist in this case. Donna's best friend, a woman named Diane Schultz, finally went to the police. She had something to say. Since her friend's death, she had gone through a heavy depression, went through hospitalizations, psychiatric treatments, and even electroshock therapy sessions. At a certain point, her own doctors said she would only have a chance to get better if she stopped keeping what she was, maybe, hiding. And what she was keeping was a devastating secret. Diane said that at the time of the murders, she was having an affair with Mark. That's right, with her best friend's husband. According to her, he repeatedly said that he wanted to leave Donna. Then he started saying he needed to get rid of her, and finally he began to openly talk about planning his wife's death. He even mentioned Roger to her, the driver who magically appeared in his life. And he fit perfectly like a piece in that evil puzzle he was putting together. Diane said she was sure Mark killed both of them, and more than that, she said he even invited her to take part in the plan. She refused. After that, according to her, Mark threatened to kill her if she talked. She never told anyone for 2 reasons: fear of people's reaction when they found out she got involved with her best friend's husband, and real fear of being killed. Carrying this alone destroyed her, little by little, for years. With this statement now, the police had no choice. They officially reopened the case, and as if that wasn't enough, something that seemed lost also resurfaced. The 3 photos taken at the crime scene, which for a long time no one knew where they were. These images, even in terrible quality, were fundamental. Just by analyzing them, several lies in Mark's version started to fall apart. He said he found Donna lying on her back, but the body was face down. Roger had practically no blood on his clothes, which makes no sense at all for someone who, theoretically, would have beaten a person with a hammer. There were pools of blood in strange positions, indicating that the scene had been rearranged. The driver's body was turned in the opposite direction from what it should have been according to Mark's account. There was more. The neighbors said he heard 2 gunshots, with about 5 minutes between them. It was exactly during this interval that Mark hung up the first call to 911. Do you remember that he fired more shots afterwards? He went back to the kitchen and fired the fatal shots at Roger, who was still breathing. With all this on the table, in 2002, Mark Winger was finally charged with the murders of Donna and Roger. He tried to plead not guilty, but ended up making a deal to escape the death penalty. In exchange for the confession, he received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. But as you'll see in a moment, this story doesn't end here. You know Diane? Yeah, the lover who kept this dirty secret for so long. You know, her fear wasn't exaggerated, right? Years after Mark was already in prison, proof came that she was right to fear for her own life. From inside prison, he tried to hire a hitman. The main target was exactly her, Diane Schultz. And it doesn't stop there. He also wanted a friend named Jeffrey Gelman to be killed. Because according to him, this man had refused to lend him $1 million to help him during the trial. The most absurd thing is the way he did it. Mark wrote a letter to the supposed hitman, explaining in great detail how he wanted the executions to happen, step by step. That in practice became a signed confession of attempted murder. The result was another conviction, which added 35 years to the life sentence he was already serving. In other words, it's safe to say that he'll never live his life outside of prison again. Today, Diane says she can finally live in peace. After carrying everything alone for so many years, she feels free. Mark's second wife, Rebecca, also didn't take long to distance herself. As soon as everything came to light, she filed for divorce. She believed she had married a hero, but found out that, in reality, she had married a cowardly, cold, and calculating murderer. She raised the children on her own, including Bailey, and was left with the little money that remained after all the legal expenses. And what about Mark himself? There are several interviews with him scattered across the internet, and if you watch any of them, you'll notice the same pattern. He keeps saying he's innocent, cries when he talks about Donna, puts himself as the victim, as if everything happened to him, not because of him. But this time, no one buys that story anymore. And at least in this, there's a slightly fairer ending. He can't hurt anyone anymore. That's right, abductees. I bet you guys didn't expect there were at least 2 plot twists in this story, right? It's really wild. This case would make a great movie, wouldn't it? It's really sad. Even so, it shows once again just how cold a human being can be for a reason like that, completely insignificant. To kill his wife like that, a person completely uninvolved, just there by chance. And it fit perfectly with the guy's demonic mind to hide that he was having an affair with his wife's best friend. What a mess. Please share your thoughts in the comments. I appreciate your company. Don't forget to like. Your comment matters. A kiss from the redhead. See you next episode.